This isn't the story of a street fight. It's the story of how a legend used absolute control to end a conflict without throwing a single punch. In downtown California, a young journalism student was about to stand her ground. A routine lunch hour turned deadly when a known internet provocator began dragging her across the sidewalk by her hair. Chuck Norris wasn't your typical bystander. For decades, he was a decorated martial artist and special forces trainer known for neutralizing threats with surgical precision and unshakable control. When Tyrell T-Bone Johnson escalated his assault in broad daylight, he had no idea. He was facing a man who'd once taught elite operators how to diffuse chaos without ego. Chuck stepped forward with measured calm, initiating a quiet response that would ignite a cultural firestorm. What began as a brutal act of street harassment would become a masterclass in restraint and moral clarity. The streets of California would never be the same after one man's decision to intervene. Not with violence, but with absolute presence. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The midday sun beat down on California Food Truck Alley, turning the downtown district into a cauldron of heat, movement, and noise. Street vendors called out specials, car horns punctuated conversations, pedestrians weaved through the urban, ballet, some rushing, others lingering at colorful storefronts. The air smelled of asphalt, spices, and possibility. Darnell Harris, DJ to everyone who mattered, wiped sweat from his brow as he handed a customer their change. His taco truck, DJ's Flavor Revolution, sat perfectly positioned at the intersection of Figueroa and 7th, where office workers and tourists collided in a daily lunch rush. Business was good. The city was alive. Everything normal until it wasn't. I said, "Leave her alone." A woman's voice sliced through the ambient noise. DJ's head snapped up, spatula frozen mid-flip. 20 yards down the sidewalk, a slender woman with a camera stood facing a man twice her size. Her stance was defiant, chin raised, shoulders squared. The man loomed over her, his face contorted with rage, a vein throbbing at his temple. "Mind your own business, bitch," the man snarled, his voice carried easily to DJ's truck. DJ recognized him instantly. Tyrell Johnson, T-Bone to his followers, local troublemaker turned social media personality, known for public confrontations that generated views, feared for his volatile temper. The woman didn't back down. "I'm making it my business." She lifted her phone. Camera pointed directly at Tyrell's face. "You don't get to intimidate people on public streets." DJ fumbled for his own phone. Something told him this needed to be recorded. His finger trembled as he hit the video button. "You filming me?" Tyrell's voice dropped an octave. Dangerous now. "You filming me?" The woman, young, maybe early 20s, with determination etched into every line of her face, stood her ground. "Someone should document how you treat women in public." Everything happened in seconds. Tyrell's arm shot out like a viper. His fingers twisted into the woman's dark hair, gripping a fistful at the roots. One violent jerk, and she stumbled forward off balance. Another, and she was on her knees on the concrete. A third, and he was dragging her, her scalp wrenched backward, feet scrambling to find purchase. Oh shit," DJ narrated, his voice shaking as he filmed. "He's dragging her. Somebody help." But nobody moved. A circle formed around the scene, 15, then 20 onlookers. Phones emerged like flowers opening to the sun. Everyone documenting. No one intervening. The woman's face contorted in pain, but she didn't scream. She clawed at Tyrell's arm, her phone still clutched in her other hand, somehow still recording. "You want fame?" Tyrell shouted, jerking her across the pavement. "I'll make you famous, sweetheart." People backed away, creating a clearing around the violence, a makeshift arena with Tyrell at its center. Some looked away, others zoomed in. A teenage boy whispered, "That's T-Bone, man. He's got like 1 million followers." DJ's hands shook so badly he could barely keep the phone steady. "Someone call the cops," he said, though not loudly enough for anyone to hear. "Anyone, please." That's when he noticed him. An older man standing at the edge of the gathering crowd, not tall, but solid, calm in a sea of panic. He wore faded jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and a weathered baseball cap that shadowed his eyes. Nothing remarkable about him. Nothing that should have drawn DJ's attention, except for the absolute stillness with which he observed the scene. While everyone else shifted nervously or recorded frantically, this man stood like an oak tree amid saplings, rooted, unmoved, watchful. His eyes tracked Tyrell with laser focus, missing nothing. The woman gasped as Tyrell yanked her hair again, forcing her face up toward him. "Not so brave now, are you? Where's all that righteous talk?" He pressed his face close to hers. "No one tells T-Bone what to do. Nobody." The still man took one step forward, then another. DJ's camera caught it, the subtle shift as the stranger moved toward the confrontation. Not rushing, not hesitating, simply advancing with purpose. Something about his movement silenced the murmurs around him. Heads turned. The circle widened instinctively to let him through. Tyrell was too focused on his victim to notice, still snarling threats into her face. "I'm going to teach you about respect. I'm going to make sure. Let her go." The voice wasn't loud, didn't need to be. It cut through the chaos like a blade, quiet, firm, undeniable. Tyrell's head whipped around his grip on the woman's hair, momentarily loosening in surprise. The stranger stood 3 feet away, hands at his sides. Nothing threatening in his posture, nothing challenging in his stance. Yet something about him radiated, a presence that commanded attention. "Who the fuck are you?" Tyrell demanded, recovering quickly, puffing his chest. "Another social justice warrior? Another hero with a phone?" The stranger had no phone, his eyes sharp, assessing, unblinking, never left Tyrell's face. I said, "Let her go," he repeated. Each word measured and distinct. A ripple passed through the crowd. Someone whispered something, then another. DJ couldn't make out the words, but he saw the wave of recognition washing across faces. Eyes widened, mouths opened slightly, phones shifted focus from Tyrell to the newcomer. Confusion crossed Tyrell's face. He didn't understand the change in energy, the sudden shift in attention. His grip on the woman's hair tightened defensively. DJ zoomed in on the stranger's face, the camera finally steady in his hands. That's when he saw it too, beneath the baseball cap behind the composed expression. Features he'd seen 1,000 times on movie posters and late-night reruns. "Holy shit," DJ whispered to his phone. "That's Chuck Norris." The word spread through the crowd like wildfire. Chuck Norris, the Chuck Norris. Phones lifted higher. People pressed forward, then back, caught between fear of Tyrell and awe of the legend standing before them. Tyrell's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to forced bravado. "Chuck Norris," he said, barking out a laugh. "Right. And I'm Bruce Lee." But the steady gaze never wavered. Chuck didn't smile, didn't explain, didn't need to. The woman looked up, recognition dawning through her pain. Hope flickered across her face. Tyrell yanked her hair again, causing her to gasp. "Back off, old man. This isn't your business." Chuck took another step forward. The air around him seemed to compress, as if the very atmosphere recognized something. The thug did not. "You made it my business," Chuck said. "When you put your hands on her." The crowd held its collective breath. DJ's narration fell silent. Tyrell's face darkened as he realized the attention had shifted completely away from him. His moment of dominance was slipping away. With a snarl, he shoved the woman hard. She fell forward onto her palms, scraping skin against concrete. Tyrell stepped over her, squaring his shoulders as he faced Chuck directly. "You know what? I don't care who you are." Tyrell's voice rose, playing to his audience again. "In my world, Legends get knocked down just like everyone else. Chuck didn't move, didn't blink, just watched as Terrell advanced, the distance between them closing with each second. Behind them, the woman pushed herself up to sitting, blood beading on her palms, her phone still recorded forgotten in her grip. DJ's camera caught her expression as she looked from Tyrell to Chuck. Pain transforming to something else entirely, something like certainty. She knew what everyone watching was about to learn. Tyrell had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The afternoon seemed to pause. Traffic sounds faded. Conversations hushed. A circle of smartphones created a digital coliseum around the two men standing just feet apart. Tyrell, all bulk and swagger, towered over Chuck, his posture aggressive, hands flexing at his sides. Chuck remained perfectly still, his presence a counterpoint to Tyrell's chaotic energy. DJ steadied his phone, determined to catch every moment. "He's just standing there," he narrated in a hushed voice. "Chuck Norris isn't even taking a fighting stance." The woman, Layla Santiago, as her press badge revealed, pulled herself to the curb, wincing as she touched her scalp. Blood spotted her fingertips where hair had torn from her skin, yet she wasn't retreating. Instead, she angled her phone camera toward the confrontation, journalist instincts overriding her pain. "Who is he?" she whispered to the man beside her, eyes never leaving Chuck. "You don't know Chuck Norris?" The man stared at her in disbelief. "Action star, martial arts champion." Illa shook her head slightly, recognition dawning. "I've heard the name, just never seen him in person." Tyrrell circled. Chuck, slowly. Performative now that he had an audience. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, every movement calculated to intimidate. "Look at this old man," Tyrrell called out, playing to the crowd. "You all think he's going to save the day? Hollywood hero." He laughed, the sound hollow in the tense air. "This ain't a movie," said Grandpa. Chuck didn't respond. His eyes tracked Tyrrell's movement with calm precision, hands relaxed at his sides. The only sign of his focus was the subtle shift of weight from one foot to the other. As Tyrrell circled, always maintaining perfect balance, always facing his opponent directly, the crowd's energy transformed with each passing second. Murmurs rippled outward. "That's really him. Chuck Norris, man. Is this for real?" Tyrell heard it too, attention shifting away from him toward the silent man in the baseball cap. His expression darkened. He stopped pacing and stepped directly into Chuck's space, close enough that their chests nearly touched. "You think these people care about you?" Tyrell's voice dropped, meant for Chuck alone, though DJ's camera caught every word. "You're just some washed-up has-been. I'm what they're here for. I'm the one they follow." Chuck's expression didn't change. Not a flicker of anger, not a hint of fear. Just that steady, assessing gaze that seemed to look through Tyrrell rather than at him. The silence stretched. 1 second, 5-10. Discomfort crept across Tyrrell's face. He'd expected reaction, anger, fear, something he could work with, something he could dominate. This calm silence was unfamiliar territory. "Say something." Tyrell finally barked, frustration breaking through his performative confidence. Chuck didn't oblige. His silence seemed to expand, filling the space between them with unspoken power. The crowd sensed it, the shift happening beneath the surface. Phones lowered slightly. Breathing slowed. DJ's commentary continued, his voice hushed with reverence. "This guy thinks he can intimidate Chuck Norris. Man, it's like watching a chihuahua bark at a lion." Tyrell heard him, his head snapped toward DJ, eyes narrowing. "You got something to say, Taco Man?" DJ froze, camera still recording. Fear flashed across his face, but before Tyrell could redirect his aggression, a small sound drew everyone's attention. Illa had risen to her feet. Blood matted the side of her hair, but her phone was steady in her hand. "We all have something to say," she called out, voice stronger than her battered appearance suggested. "That's the point." Terrell's focus snapped, back to her, rage flaring in his eyes. "You want more? You didn't learn your lesson the first time?" He took one step toward her and found Chuck suddenly between them. Chuck hadn't lunged or jumped, hadn't made any dramatic move. Yet somehow he was simply there, positioned precisely where he needed to be. His movement had been so fluid, so economical that it seemed as if the space itself had shifted around him. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Terrell's face. "Back up, old man," he said, the words lacking their previous conviction. Chuck didn't speak, didn't move. His eyes held Terrell's with unwavering focus. The crowd sensed the shift. A tension like electricity buzzed through the air. Someone whispered, "He's going to get dropped." Another voice answered, "Shh, just watch." Terrell felt control slipping away. His performance needed reaction, needed fear to feed on. This quiet standoff was stealing his audience. In desperation, he did what bullies do when cornered. He escalated. "You deaf!" Tyrell shouted, shoving his face closer to Chuck's. "I said back up!" His hand shot out, pushing hard against Chuck's chest or trying to. Chuck didn't stumble backward, didn't sway. The hand connected with solid muscle that yielded nothing. It was like pushing against a concrete pillar. Shock registered on Terrell's face. He pushed harder. Chuck remained unmoved, feet planted, balance perfect. A murmur spread through the crowd. Someone laughed. A short, surprised sound quickly stifled. Phones lifted higher. The circle tightened as onlookers pressed forward, sensing something remarkable was about to happen. "The guy who's about to change everything," DJ whispered to his camera, voice trembling with anticipation. Illa shifted position, ignoring the pain in her scalp as she captured the standoff from a new angle. Her journalistic instincts recognized the story unfolding, not just of violence interrupted, but of something more profound. A collision of worldviews, power versus force, discipline versus chaos. Tyrell sensed his audience slipping away, his face contorted with rage and humiliation. "You think you're tough?" he snarled. "You think these people care about some old man?" Chuck finally spoke, his voice low and even. "This isn't about me or you." The words seemed to confuse Tyrell. He blinked momentarily, thrown off script. "It's about her." Chuck continued with a slight nod toward Illa. "And everyone else you think you can hurt because you're afraid." "Afraid?" Tyrell barked out a laugh. "I'm not afraid of anything, old man. Especially not you." Chuck's expression remained unchanged. "Fear is why you drag women by their hair, why you need people to watch, why you're talking instead of walking away right now." Each word landed with quiet precision. The crowd grew completely silent, straining to hear. "You've already lost," Chuck said. "You just don't know it yet." Something in his tone, not threatening but certain, sent a visible tremor through Terrell's frame. For a heartbeat, doubt crossed his face. Then rage consumed it. "Lost!" Terrell's voice rose to a shout. "I haven't even started!" His right hand clenched into a fist, muscles tensing as he prepared to swing. The crowd gasped collectively, phones steady, not wanting to miss what was coming. Chuck didn't shift into a fighting stance, didn't raise his hands, just stood there, watching Tyrell with the patient focus of a man who had faced far worse and remained standing. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Tyrell hesitated, thrown by Chuck's calm. In that moment of uncertainty, someone in the crowd called out, "Let him fight!" The words sparked something. Others joined in. "Let him fight! Let him fight!" The chant built, rolling through the gathering, not aggressive, but expectant. They weren't calling for blood. They were calling for justice, for consequence. Tyrell's eyes darted around, taking in the crowd that had once fed his ego, but now turned against him. His gaze returned to Chuck's steady eyes, and something inside him snapped. With a roar of frustration, he swung his fist directly at Chuck's face. The punch never landed. One moment, Chuck stood directly in its path. The next, he wasn't there. No dramatic duck, no exaggerated evasion, just a slight shift of weight, a minimal tilt of his head, and Tyrell's fist sliced through empty air where Chuck's jaw had been a fraction of a second earlier. The crowd's collective intake of breath sounded like a gust of wind. Phones tracked the movement, trying to capture what eyes could barely follow. "Did you see that?" DJ's voice cracked with excitement as he narrated. He didn't even move his feet. Tyrell stumbled forward, thrown off balance by the momentum of his missed swing, his face twisted with shock, then rage. He pivoted, launching another punch, wider, wilder. Again, Chuck wasn't there to receive it. A subtle side-deep, economical and precise, left tier swinging at shadows. "Stand still," Tyrell shouted, frustration cracking his voice. Chuck said nothing. His hands remained at his sides, his breathing calm. Only his eyes moved, tracking Tyrell's increasingly desperate attacks with laser focus. Tyrell's next punch came with his full weight behind it. A haymaker aimed to end things. Chuck slipped inside the arc of the swing, so close that the crowd gasped. For a heartbeat, the two men were face to face, close enough to share breath. "Fighting is what you do," Chuck said quietly, "when you've run out of better options." Then he was gone again, stepped back to his original position, leaving. Tyrell punching air and staggering forward. Around them, the crowd's energy transformed. The shock of the initial violence had given way to something else, a reverent, almost electric anticipation. They weren't watching a street fight anymore. They were witnessing mastery. Hila pushed closer, phone steady despite her injuries. "This is unreal," she whispered, not to her camera, but to herself. Tyrell heard her. His head snapped in her direction, humiliation feeding his rage. "You think this is funny? You think this is a show?" He lunged toward her, abandoning his focus on Chuck. A critical error. Chuck's hand shot out, catching Tyrell's, wrist in midair, not striking, just stopping, holding. The movement was so fast it blurred on camera. Tyrell froze, startled by the sudden immovable grip on his arm. "That's enough," Chuck said, voice steady. The crowd fell silent, tension crackling, like static electricity. Every phone, every eye locked on the two men joined at Tyrell's suspended wrist. Tyrell yanked against the hold. Chuck's grip didn't budge. Tyrell pulled harder, muscles straining, veins standing out on his neck. Nothing. It was like trying to move a mountain with bare hands. "Let go," Tyrell growled, trying to mask fear with aggression. Chuck held his gaze. "Will you walk away?" "Fuck you." Chuck didn't react to the insult. His expression remained calm, his voice level. "Will you walk away?" he repeated. Tyrell's other hand came up in a wild swing. Before it could connect, Chuck shifted his weight slightly. No dramatic movement, just a subtle redistribution of balance. But Tyrell suddenly found himself off-center, stumbling to one knee. Chuck released his wrist and stepped back, giving him space. He just took him down with barely a touch. DJ's voice rose with disbelief. "Did you all see that?" The crowd pressed closer, smartphones creating a wall of digital witnesses. Someone shouted, "Chuck! Chuck! Chuck!" Others joined in, the chant building. Momentum. Tyrell pushed himself up, face flushed with humiliation. The cameras trained on his every move, stripped away the persona he'd built. No longer the dominant force, no longer in control of the narrative. "You think this makes you tough?" Tyrell shouted, desperation edging his voice, showing off for these people. Chuck's response was simple. "I'm not the one who needs an audience." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Tyrell's expression faltered, something vulnerable flickering behind the rage. In that moment, DJ's camera caught what happened next in perfect detail. Tires shift from embarrassment to blind fury. The decision written across his face, the commitment to violence as his last resort, he charged Chuck full force, abandoning any pretense of skilled fighting. Pure aggression, pure desperation. Chuck waited perfectly still until the last possible moment. Then he moved, not away, but toward the attack. One step, precise, intentional, their bodies connected. Chuck's hand found Tyrell's center of gravity, a subtle redirect of momentum, a perfect application of physics. Tyrell went airborne. The crowd gasped as his feet left the ground. His expression transformed from rage to shock as he realized he was flying. The landing was less graceful, a hard impact with the pavement that knocked the wind from his lungs. Chuck hadn't thrown a single punch, hadn't kicked, hadn't struck. He'd simply used Tyrell's own force against him. Silence fell over the crowd as Tyrell lay on his back, dazed and gasping. Chuck stood nearby, hands once again at his sides, posture relaxed, waiting, watching. "Jesus," someone whispered. He barely touched him. Illa moved closer, recording everything. "It's not about force," she said loud enough for her video to capture. "It's about control." Tyrell heard her. Humiliation burned through his disorientation. With a roar, he scrambled to his feet and charged again. No strategy, just blind rage. This time, Chuck didn't evade. He planted his feet, centered his balance, and met the charge head-on. One movement, clean, efficient. His palm connected with Tyrell's sternum. Not a strike, but a stop. Like hitting a wall at full speed, Tyrell's momentum reversed instantly. He staggered backward, eyes wide with shock. "That's what control looks like," DJ narrated, his voice hushed with reverence. "That's a master right there." Tyrell wheezed, struggling to recapture the breath knocked from his lungs. His eyes darted around at the crowd, the phones, the faces, watching his humiliation in real time. Everything he'd built, his street reputation, his social media persona, crumbling with each labored breath. "Who?" he gasped, trying to regain his composure. "Who do you think you are?" Chuck's expression remained unchanged, just someone who happened to be walking by. The simplicity of the response seemed to break something in Tyrell. His shoulders slumped. The rage drained from his face, replaced by the dawning realization that he couldn't win this. Not with fists, not with words, not with performance. For a moment, it seemed the confrontation might end there. A lesson learned. A quiet resolution. Then Tyrell's hand moved to his waistband, and everything changed. The glint of metal caught the afternoon sun. A knife, short-bladed but sharp, appeared in his grip. "Oh," DJ whispered, camera unsteady as he took an involuntary step back. "He's got a knife." The crowd scattered, creating distance. Phones still recorded, but from safer positions. Fear rippled through the gathered onlookers. Chuck didn't retreat, his expression sharpened, focus intensifying, but no fear crossed his face. If anything, he seemed more centered, more present in the moment. "Don't do this," he said quietly. Tyrell adjusted his grip on the knife, desperation making his movements jerky. "You think you're better than me? You think these people respect you? They just want to see blood. They just want their white videos to go viral." "This isn't about them," Chuck said, his voice steady. "This is about you making a choice right now. I already made my choice." Tyrell's voice cracked. No turning back now. He lunged forward, knife extended. What happened next seemed impossible, even in slow-motion replay. Chuck's hand connected with Tyrell's wrist, not blocking but redirecting. His other hand found Tyrell's elbow, a subtle twist, a precise application of pressure. Tyrell cried out. The knife clattered to the pavement. His arm bent at an unnatural angle, caught in Chuck's grip, not broken, but on the verge. "Choices have consequences," Chuck said quietly. He applied slightly more pressure. Terrell dropped to his knees, face contorted in pain, completely at Chuck's mercy. The crowd fell silent, witnessing not just physical domination, but a fundamental truth. Real power doesn't need to destroy, it simply needs to control. Chuck held the position for a heartbeat longer than necessary, making sure the lesson registered, then released Tyrell's arm and stepped back. He kicked the knife well out, of reach, sending it skittering across the pavement. Terrell stayed on his knees, cradling his arm, all bravado stripped away. "It's over," Chuck said. Not a command, a simple statement of fact. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Someone had finally called the police. "He's coming," DJ called out camera train down the street where red and blue lights flashed. "Cops are coming." The crowd shifted nervously. Some dispersed, melting away before authorities arrived. Others pressed closer, determined to capture the resolution. Tyrell looked up at Chuck, then at the approaching police car, calculation crossing his face. For a moment, it seemed he might try to flee. "Don't," Chuck said, reading his intention. "Some things you can't outrun." Whether it was the words or the calm certainty behind them, Tyrell's resistance crumbled. He remained kneeling, defeated, not just physically, but fundamentally. The police car pulled to the curb, lights flashing. Officer Renee Alvarez stepped out, hand resting instinctively on her holstered weapon as she assessed the scene. "What's going on here?" she called out. Authority in every syllable. The crowd erupted with explanations, voices overlapping. Alvarez raised a hand for silence, her sharp gaze taking in the kneeling Terrell, the scattered knife, the injured Illa, and the calm figure of Chuck standing apart from it all. "One at a time," she said firmly. "Who wants to tell me what happened?" Illa stepped forward, phone still recording. "I can show you," she said, wiping blood from her temple. "All of it." Alvarez's eyes narrowed as she noted Illa's injuries. "And you are?" "Illa Santiago, journalism student at UCLA. She swallowed hard and the person he assaulted. Alvarez's focus shifted to Terrell, still on his knees. "Is that true?" Terrell didn't answer. His gaze remained fixed on the ground, the fight gone out of him completely. "It's true," DJ called out, stepping forward with his phone extended. "I got it all on video." He dragged her by the hair. Then he pulled a knife when this guy stopped him. Alvarez turned her attention to Chuck, who stood quietly observing the scene. Recognition flickered across her face, quickly masked by professional detachment. "Sir," she said, "I'm going to need a statement from you as well." Chuck nodded once, respectful of her authority. "Of course, officer." Alvarez called for backup, then approached Terrell. "On your feet. Hands where I can see them." Terrell complied without resistance. All his earlier aggression evaporated as Alvarez secured his wrists with handcuffs. Her gaze returned to Chuck. "You didn't have to get involved," she said. "Professional, but curious. Most people don't." Chuck's response was simple. "Some things you can't walk past." Alvarez studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. A gesture of respect, officer to citizen. "We'll need those videos," she said to DJ and Illa. "Evidence." As Alvarez led Terrell to the patrol car, the crowd began to disperse. The drama was ending, the spectacle concluding, yet something remained in the air. A sense that they'd witnessed, something beyond a simple street confrontation. DJ lowered his camera, finally, approaching Chuck with cautious reverence. "Man, that was I don't even have words." Chuck offered a slight smile, the first crack in his composed exterior. "Sometimes, words aren't needed." He turned toward Illa, concern crossing his face as he noted her injuries. "You should get that looked at." Illa nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "I will." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for stepping in when no one else would." Chuck's response was quiet, meant just for her. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about what you do despite the fear. He nodded toward her phone, still clutched in her hand. You showed plenty of that today. A second. Police car arrived. More officers, more questions coming. Chuck glanced at the gathering authorities, then back at Illa and DJ. They'll take care of things from here. He turned, preparing to leave as quietly as he had arrived. Wait, DJ called after him. Don't you want credit? I mean, this video's going viral for sure. Chuck paused, looking back with a slight shake of his head. That's not why I stepped in. Before either could respond, he was walking away, moving through the dispersing crowd with the same quiet purpose that had brought him into the confrontation. No fanfare, no spotlight, just a man who did what needed doing, then continued on his way. Behind him, Illa looked down at her phone, the recording still active. Did you get all that? She asked DJ. He nodded, staring after Chuck's retreating figure. Every second. Good, Illa said, a determined edge entering her voice. Because this is a story people need to see. As Chuck disappeared around a corner, neither knew how true those words would prove to be. Within hours, the internet exploded. Video from multiple angles flooded. Social media. Each clip building the story from different perspectives. DJ's footage captured the raw confrontation. Layla's phone documented the aftermath and Chuck's quiet words. Bystanders contributed their fragments, some showing Terrell's initial assault, others focusing on Chuck's controlled response. Hashtags trended: Chuck Norris Street Justice, Real-Life Hero, Quiet Strength, in a digital landscape hungry for authentic moments. This one struck a nerve. Not just another viral video of street violence, but a glimpse of something increasingly rare: controlled power, disciplined response, intervention without escalation. Inside the LAPD's downtown precinct, Illa sat in an examination room as a medic cleaned the abrasions on her scalp. Officer Alvarez stood nearby, notebook in hand. So you confronted him because he was harassing another woman? Alvarez clarified, jotting notes. Illa winced as antiseptics stung her wounds. Yes, he was getting in her face following her. I started, filming to document it. That's when he turned on me. Alvarez nodded, her expression professional but sympathetic. And you've never met Mr. Norris before today? Never. Illa shook her head slightly, careful of her injuries. I recognized him, of course, once people started saying his name, but I didn't know him personally, and he just happened to be there. Right place, right time, I guess. Illa attempted a smile that turned into a grimace of pain for me. Anyway, Alvarez made another note, then closed her notebook. Mr. Johnson has prior assault menacing. This incident violates his probation. Her eyes met Illa's directly. He won't be on the streets for a while. Relief washed over Illa's face. Good. Your video evidence helps, Alvarez added. Clear documentation of the assault, the knife. She paused, and Mr. Norris's intervention. Layla's phone sat on the examination table beside her, its screen still displaying the paused video. Have you spoken with him, Chuck? Briefly. Alvarez's expression revealed little. He gave a statement, then declined our offer to drive. Him home, said he preferred to walk. That tracks, Illa said with a slight smile. He didn't seem like someone who wants attention. Alvarez's professional demeanor softened slightly. In my 15 years on the force, I've seen a lot of takedowns, never one that quiet. Her eyes held a hint of admiration. Most people who know how to fight want everyone to know it. He just handled it. Outside in the waiting area, DJ scrolled through his phone, watching his video gain traction in real time. Thousands of views becoming tens of thousands. Comments flooding in faster than he could read them. You were there for real. Chuck is the GOAT. No question. That thug got exactly what he deserved. The way he just stood there and took zero damage. Legend. A local news crew had already contacted him, requesting permission to air the footage. 3 different viral content aggregators offered to license it. His regular stream of taco customers would be nothing compared to what was coming. "Mr. Harris," a voice pulled him from his phone. DJ looked up to find a woman in a sharp blazer, extending her hand. "Rebecca Walsh, KTLA News. Do you have a moment?" Before he could respond, the precinct door swung open. 2 uniformed officers led Terrell through the waiting area toward processing. His swagger was gone, replaced by a slouched posture and downcast eyes. A bandage wrapped his wrist where Chuck had applied pressure. Terrell's gaze locked with DJ's. For a moment, recognition, then shame, flashing across his face before he looked away. The officers guided him through a security door out of sight. "Was that him?" Rebecca asked, camera operator already positioning for a better angle. "The assailant?" DJ nodded, still processing the transformation. The man being led away bore little resemblance to the intimidating figure who had dragged Isla across the pavement hours earlier. "That's T-Bone," he confirmed, "Terrell Johnson, and you captured the entire confrontation." Every second, DJ held up his phone. From the assault to Chuck Norris stepping in, all of it. Rebecca's eyes lit up at the confirmation. Chuck Norris, the martial arts legend and actor, the one and only. DJ couldn't keep the awe from his voice. "And let me tell you something. It wasn't like a movie fight. It was... I don't even know how to describe it." "Try," Rebecca encouraged, gesturing for her cameraman to start recording. DJ took a breath, searching for words that could capture what he'd witnessed. It wasn't violence. It was like control. Perfect control. Terrell would swing and Chuck would just not be there. Or he'd touch him just a touch and Terrell would be on the ground. "He didn't throw any punches?" Rebecca pressed, clearly intrigued. "That's the thing," DJ said, warming to his story. "He didn't need to. When Tier pulled the knife, Chuck didn't panic, didn't get angry. He just handled it like he was solving a math problem, not fighting for his life." In the examination room, the medic finished bandaging Ila's head. "You should see a doctor in the next day or 2, she advised. "Make sure there's no infection." Ila nodded gingerly, touching the bandage. "Thank you." Officer Alvarez handed Ila her personal items in an evidence bag. "We've downloaded a copy of your video for the case file. You're free to go, but we'll need you to make a formal statement tomorrow." "I'll be here," Ila promised. She checked her phone. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of notifications. Her student journalism account had gained thousands of followers in the past hours. "This is insane." "Get used to it," Alvarez said with a knowing look. "Stories like this don't come along every day." As Ila gathered her things, Alvarez paused at the door. "For what it's worth," she said quietly. "It took courage to step in like you did. Most people just walk by." Ila looked up, surprised by the personal comment. "Both of you," Alvarez clarified. "You and Norris, different methods, same principle." With that, she was gone, leaving Ila alone with her thoughts and the growing realization that her life had just irrevocably changed. Outside the precinct, the evening air had cooled, news vans lined the curb, reporters preparing for live shots. DJ stood surrounded by microphones, recounting his version of events for the 3rd time. And then, Chuck just walks away. Doesn't want credit, doesn't want attention, just does what needs doing and disappears. Ila emerged from the building, immediately spotting the media circus. Her journalistic instincts clashed with her personal experience being the story rather than covering it, felt profoundly uncomfortable. A reporter spotted her pointing cameras in her direction. "Miss Santiago, can we get your statement about the attack?" Before she could respond, her phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Rooftop cafe across the street. "If you want to talk," Ila scanned the buildings opposite the precinct. A small cafe occupied the roof of a converted warehouse. Its string lights just visible in the gathering dusk. Her heart rate quickened. Slipping past the reporters with a quick no comment, She crossed the street and found the cafe's entrance, a discreet door next to an artisan bakery. The elevator required a code, but a couple exiting held it for her with friendly smiles. The rooftop opened to a tranquil space that seemed worlds away from the chaos below. Potted palms and canvas awnings created private nooks around mismatched tables. String lights cast a warm glow across wooden decking. In the farthest corner, sitting, alone with his back to the wall and a clear view of the entrance, was Chuck Norris. He wore the same clothes as earlier, though he'd removed the baseball cap. His face in the gentle lighting showed lines of experience, not just age, but life lived with purpose. He noticed her immediately, acknowledging her with a slight nod. Ela approached his table, suddenly aware of her bandaged head and disheveled appearance. "How did you get my number?" she asked, bypassing pleasantries. A hint of a smile touched Chuck's face. "Officer Alvarez thought we might want to talk." Off the record, Ela hesitated, then took the seat across from him. A server approached, and Chuck ordered coffee for both of them with a politeness that seemed from another era. "How's your head?" he asked once they were alone. "Better than it would have been if you hadn't shown up." Ela studied him with professional curiosity. "Why did you step in? I mean, most people don't." Chuck considered the question, taking his time. "Some things you can't walk past," he said finally. "Not if you want to sleep at night. Most people manage, too," Ela pointed out. "Most people haven't trained their whole lives to handle situations like that." His voice carried no judgment, just simple observation. The server returned with their coffee. Ela wrapped her hands around the warm mug, finding comfort in its solidity. "You could have hurt him," she said. "Badly. You had every justification." Chuck's expression remained calm. Hurting him wasn't the point? Then what was? Stopping him. Chuck sipped his coffee. "There's a difference between winning a fight and ending one." Ela considered this, sensing the philosophy behind the simple words. "The videos are everywhere," she said. "You're trending on every platform." I figured as much. He seemed neither pleased nor disturbed by the information. "You don't care about being recognized?" "No." Chuck set his mug down carefully. "About the message?" "Yes." "What message is that?" Ela leaned forward, journalist instincts engaging. "That strength without control is just violence." His eyes met hers directly. "That stepping in matters. That one person can change a situation without becoming what they're fighting against." Below them, police lights still flashed, reporters still gathered. The digital storm continued to build around footage of their encounter. But up here, in this quiet moment, Ela understood something the videos couldn't capture. "You've been doing this a long time," she said. "Not a question." Chuck nodded slightly. "Different context, same principles. And after today, when this goes viral and everyone's talking about Chuck Norris again, tomorrow, I'll teach my regular class at the Veterans Center," he said simply. "Life goes on." Ela studied him, trying to reconcile the calm man before her with the precise, unstoppable force she'd witnessed on the street. "You make it sound so normal." "It is normal." Chuck's voice softened. "Doing what you can where you are, with what you have. That's all any of us can do." The simplicity of it struck her more powerfully than any martial arts move. As a journalism student, she'd been trained to look for complexity, for angles, for the story behind the story. But sometimes the truth was plain, unadorned, and all the more powerful for it. "You showed courage today," Chuck said, breaking her reverie. "Standing up for that woman, standing your ground." Ela touched her bandaged head self-consciously. A lot of good it did. "More than you know." Chuck leaned forward slightly. "That moment before I arrived, before anything else happened, that choice to step in rather than walk by. That's what matters. The rest is just details." From her pocket, Isla's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. The world wanted to talk about Chuck Norris, the viral takedown, the dramatic confrontation. But sitting across from him, she realized the real story wasn't in the spectacle. It was in this quiet conversation, in the principles that guided action, rather than the action itself. "I'd like to tell that story," she said finally. "Not just what happened, but why. The philosophy behind it." Chuck studied her for a long moment, as if assessing her intentions with the same precision he'd evaluated Tyrell's attacks. Finally, he nodded. "Not about me," he stipulated. "About the choice, about standing up when it matters." Agreed. Illa extended her hand across the table, on the record this time. Chuck's handshake was firm but gentle, controlled strength just like everything else about him. On the record, he agreed. As their conversation continued, the city lights came on below them, creating a backdrop of urban brilliance. Two strangers connected by circumstance, now exploring the deeper questions behind a moment of violence, transformed into a lesson in restraint. In the digital sphere, clips continued to spread. Chuck's calm stance, Tyrone's wild attacks, the precise resolution. Millions watched, commented, shared. But none of them saw what Illa now understood. Real power wasn't in the physical techniques or the dramatic conclusion. It was in the choice to engage, the discipline to control, the wisdom to end conflict, without creating more. And that was a story worth telling. By morning, the video had transcended viral status to become a cultural moment. Breakfast shows played the footage on loop. Social media platforms featured it in trending sections. Commentary ranged from martial arts experts analyzing Chuck's technique to sociologists discussing bystander intervention ethics. What might have been just another street fight video had become something more. A flashpoint for conversations about real strength versus performative aggression. DJ Harris arrived at his taco truck to find a line already forming, not just for food, but for a glimpse of the man who documented it all. He'd gained 30,000 followers overnight. 3 different morning shows had requested interviews. His phone hadn't stopped ringing. "DJ, over here," a customer waved excitedly. "You're famous, man." DJ laughed, still processing his unexpected celebrity. "Just in the right place at the right time." "Or the wrong place at the right time," another customer chimed in. "Depending how you look at it." As DJ prepared his kitchen for the day, his phone pinged with a notification. Layla Santiago had tagged him in a post. He opened it to find a professional quality photo of Chuck Norris sitting across a cafe table, expression thoughtful as he spoke. The caption read, "The real story isn't in the fight. It's in the choice to engage when others walk away. Full interview coming soon in Euclid Daily Bruin." DJ smiled, impressed by Illa's journalistic instincts, while everyone else chased the spectacle she'd found the substance. He added a comment. "Can't wait to read this. There was more happening than what my camera caught." At the downtown precinct, Officer Alvarez stood before a bank of microphones delivering an official statement to the gathered press. At approximately 2:45 p.m. yesterday, officers responded to an assault in progress on Figueroa Street. The suspect, identified as Tyrell Johnson, has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon, violation of probation, and multiple related offenses. The victim received medical treatment and has been released. A reporter called out, "Can you confirm Chuck Norris was involved?" Alvarez maintained her professional demeanor. "We can confirm that a civilian intervened to protect the victim before officers arrived. That individual provided a statement and has been fully cooperative with our investigation. But it was Chuck Norris, right?" Another reporter pressed. "The individual's identity is not relevant to the charges filed," Alvarez replied firmly. "What matters is that someone chose to help, rather than simply record or walk away." Inside the precinct, Tyrell Johnson sat in an interview room, hands cuffed, to the table. His attorney, a public defender with an overloaded case file, reviewed the charges with barely concealed frustration. "The DA is pushing for maximum penalties. she explained, flipping through paperwork. The video evidence is problematic for your case. Tyrell stared at the table. The bravado of his street persona completely evaporated. How bad? 3 to 5 years. Minimum. The attorney sighed. The assault was filmed from multiple angles. The knife is clearly visible. Your probation officer has already filed for revocation. And then there's the matter of Mr. Norris's statement. Tyrell's head snapped up. What did he say? The attorney consulted her notes. That's the one surprising element. He declined to press charges for your assault on him. His statement focuses entirely on your actions toward Mrs. Santiago. Confusion crossed Tyrell's face. He's not pressing charges after what happened? Apparently not. The attorney studied her client with renewed interest. He stated, and I quote, "The young man has enough. Challenges ahead without adding more." Tyrell sat back, struggling to process this information. The man he had threatened, had tried to stab, was showing him mercy. It made no sense within his worldview. "What happens now?" he asked finally, voice subdued. "Now we discuss plea options," his attorney said, returning to business. "And you start thinking about who you want to be when you eventually get out." Across town at UCLA Medical Center, Isla sat on an examination table as a doctor checked her sutured scalp. "The emergency medics did a good job," the doctor noted, gently prodding the wound. "Still, you're lucky. Scalp injuries bleed dramatically, but tend to heal well. No signs of concussion." Layla nodded, wincing slightly at the touch. "When can I get back to work?" "Journalism waits for no one." The doctor smiled. "You can resume any normal activities. Just keep the wound clean and watch for signs of infection." She stepped back, making notes in a chart. "You're something of a celebrity in the hospital today, you know." Ila shifted uncomfortably. "I'd rather focus on telling the story than being it." "Understandable." The doctor completed her notes. "Though I must say that video was extraordinary. Not just what happened, but how it happened." "That's exactly what I'm writing about," Ila said, her professional passion overtaking her discomfort. Everyone's focused on the takedown, the physical confrontation. But there's a deeper story about intervention, about controlled response versus reaction, about the difference between power and force, the doctor suggested. "Exactly." Layla's eyes lit up. That's what Chuck said too, in different words. The doctor raised an eyebrow. "You spoke with him last night." Ila couldn't keep the pride from her voice for over an hour. It was illuminating. "I imagine so." The doctor signed the discharge papers. "Well, you're cleared to continue your illuminating work, Miss Santiago. Just try to avoid further head injuries in pursuit of the story." Outside, the hospital, Ila checked her phone. 17 missed calls, hundreds of notifications, and one new text from Chuck. "Veterans Center 2 p.m. if you want to see the principals in practice." Her editor had been calling non-stop, eager for the exclusive interview. National outlets were offering significant sums for her footage and first-hand account. But something about Chuck's invitation felt more important than all of that. She texted back a simple, "I'll be there." At precisely 2 p.m., Ila arrived at a nondescript building in a quiet East California neighborhood. A small sign identified it as Valley Veteran Support Center. Nothing flashy, nothing indicating that inside a martial arts legend might be teaching. She entered to find a converted gymnasium. One half contained meeting spaces and offices. The other featured training mats and simple equipment. In the center of the mats, Chuck stood barefoot in a plain black GI, surrounded by a dozen students of varying ages, all adults, some clearly bearing the physical and emotional marks of military service. Chuck noticed her immediately, but gave no indication, continuing his instruction without pause. "Power without control is just violence," he was saying the exact words he'd shared with her the night before. "Control without power is just theory. We need both." Ila found a seat along the wall, pulling out her notebook. The setting was worlds away from the downtown confrontation. Yet, the principles being taught were exactly what she had witnessed in action. Chuck demonstrated a simple wrist lock with one of the students, a young veteran with a prosthetic leg. The movement was precise, controlled, efficient, just like yesterday. Notice I'm not using strength, Chuck explained to the class. I'm using leverage, position, and the natural weaknesses of the joint. My partner isn't being hurt, he's being controlled. He released the hold and had the students pair up to practice. As they worked, he circulated among them, making small corrections, offering quiet encouragement. His teaching style was methodical but warm. No shouting, no demanding, just patient guidance. During a water break, he approached Ila. "What do you think?" he asked, gesturing to the class. "It's not what people expect," she admitted. "When they think of martial arts training, they imagine more drama," Chuck suggested with a slight smile. Exactly. Layla looked around at the students, noting their focused expressions. This is about precision, not power. Control, not dominance. The same principles apply whether you're in a gym or on a street corner. Chuck's expression grew serious. Yesterday wasn't extraordinary from a technical perspective. It was just application of these basics. Layla gestured to the veterans practicing nearby. Why this group specifically? Chuck considered the question because they understand something civilians often don't. That force is a last resort, not a first instinct. That control matters more than dominance. As they spoke, the gym door opened. DJ Harris entered hesitantly, looking around until he spotted Ila. She waved him over, surprised but pleased by his appearance. "Sorry to interrupt," DJ said, glancing between them. "Your editor at the Daily Bruin told me I might find you here." He turned to Chuck, extending his hand with barely contained awe. "Sir, I just wanted to thank you personally. What you did yesterday was..." Chuck shook his hand firmly. "You did something important too," he said. "You documented the truth that matters." DJ seemed startled by the acknowledgement. "I just held a phone. I didn't step in. There are many ways to engage." Chuck replied, "You chose one. Now others can learn from what happened." Before DJ could respond, Chuck was called back to the class. As he returned to teaching, DJ turned to Ila. "I've been following your posts," he said. "The angle you're taking about choice and intervention, rather than just the fight. It's powerful. It's the real story," Ila said. "Everyone's focused on the viral moment, the take-on, but what matters is what led to it, the choice to engage rather than walk past." DJ nodded thoughtfully. "My footage has been licensed by every major network. They're all calling it Chuck Norris Street Justice or something equally sensational." "Of course they are." Layla's tone held no judgment, just understanding of media dynamics. Spectacle sells. "But it's not the whole truth," DJ said, watching Chuck demonstrate another technique to his class. "The truth is more quiet." Ila smiled, surprised by DJ's insight. "Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to capture." As the class continued, more visitors arrived. Not fans or celebrity seekers, but people connected to yesterday's events. The woman Terrell had originally harassed, who had disappeared before police arrived. A teenager who had filmed from another angle. An elderly man who had witnessed everything from a bus stop. They gathered along the wall, watching respectfully. As Chuck taught, not interrupting, not seeking autographs or selfies, just observing the principles that had resolved yesterday's violence being taught in a controlled environment. When the class finally ended, Chuck approached the gathered observers. No grand speech, no moment of ceremony. He simply acknowledged each person with respect, listening to their perspectives, answering questions with thoughtful brevity. To the woman Terrell had harassed, "You didn't do anything wrong. His choices were his responsibility, not yours." To the teenager with the additional footage, "I hope you learned something beyond what your camera captured." To the elderly man from the bus stop, Next time, call the police immediately. That helps too. As the conversation continued, Illa realized she was witnessing something rare in a world of viral fame and fleeting attention. Authentic connection, not performance, not branding, just human beings processing a shared experience guided by someone who understood that wisdom wasn't in knowing how to fight, but in knowing when and why to engage. Officer Alvarez arrived last, still in uniform, but clearly off duty. She nodded to Illa and DJ, then waited patiently for a moment with Chuck. When they finally spoke, it was brief but meaningful. "The DA wanted me to confirm you won't be pressing charges," she said. Chuck shook his head. "Not necessary. The young man has enough to deal with." Alvarez studied him with professional assessment. "He could have killed you. Or Miss Santiago." "But he didn't," Chuck replied simply. "And now he has a chance to learn from it." "That's unusually forgiving." Chuck's expression remained calm. Punishment isn't always the best teacher. As the gathering slowly dispersed, Illa found herself walking outside with DJ and Officer Alvarez. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. "What happens now?" DJ asked, looking between them. "With the story, I mean." Illa considered the question. "I tell it. Not just what happened, but why it matters. Not just the spectacle, but the substance. People will still focus on the takedown," Alvarez pointed out. "That's how it works." "Some will," Illa agreed, "but others might see beyond it. Might understand that real strength isn't in dominating others. It's in controlling yourself." DJ nodded slowly. "I came here thinking I'd meet a legend. Instead, I met a teacher," Alvarez replied. "Exactly." DJ glanced back at the unassuming building. A teacher who just happened to be in the right place at the right time. As they parted ways, Illa felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The viral moment would fade. The sensation would pass. But the principles, the choice to engage, the control in conflict, the wisdom in restraint, those were timeless. And that was the story she would tell. 1 week later, the view count had surpassed 50 million. DJ's footage, licensed, shared, clipped, and remixed, had become part of the digital landscape. Talk shows had devoted segments to analyzing the confrontation. Martial arts experts created frame-by-frame breakdowns of Chuck's techniques. Self-defense instructors used it as a teaching tool. For a brief, intense moment, Chuck Norris had recaptured the public imagination. Yet Chuck himself remained largely invisible. He had given no interviews beyond Layla's, made no public appearances, endorsed no products or causes. After that day, at the Veterans Center, he had simply returned to his regular life, teaching, mentoring, living according to the principles he had demonstrated so dramatically on that downtown street. The digital world moved on as it always does. New sensations emerged, new outrage, new viral moments. But something from that confrontation lingered in the cultural consciousness, a reminder of what strength could look like when divorced from ego and spectacle. In his downtown apartment, DJ scrolled through the latest statistics on his video. The licensing fees had changed his financial situation dramatically. 3 different food delivery apps had approached him about sponsorship, deals for his taco truck. A local news station had offered him a segment as a digital culture correspondent. Yet, as he reviewed the footage for the 100th time, what struck him wasn't the takedown or the technical skill. It was the expressions, Terrell's face transitioning from arrogance to confusion to humiliation, Chuck's unwavering calm throughout, Layla's determination despite her injuries. A notification appeared on his screen. Layla's article had finally been published, not just in the UCLA Daily Bruin, but picked up by national outlets. The headline read simply, "The choice to engage, what real strength looks like." DJ opened it immediately, eager to see how she had captured what his camera could not. The piece began not with the confrontation, but with the veterans class, describing Chuck's patient instruction, the principles he taught, the philosophy behind the practice. Only then did it move to the street encounter, framing it not as a viral sensation, but as a real-world application of those same principles. One paragraph in particular caught DJ's attention. In an age where strength is often confused with dominance, where power is measured by one's ability to intimidate rather than protect, Chuck Norris's intervention offers a different model. Not the flashy, choreographed violence of action films, but the measured response of someone who understands that true power lies in control, both of oneself and the situation. The most remarkable aspect wasn't that he subdued an armed attacker without injury. It was that he did so with the minimum necessary force, without ego, without spectacle, without seeking glory or recognition. He engaged not because he wanted to fight, but because he couldn't walk past injustice. DJ nodded to himself, recognizing the truth in her words. He scrolled down to find quotes from his own interview, surprised by how articulate she had made him sound. "I thought I was just documenting another street fight," says Darnell Harris, whose footage of the encounter went viral within hours. "But what I captured was actually the opposite. It wasn't about violence. It was about ending violence. There's a difference." Further down, Officer Alvarez offered her professional perspective. "In law enforcement, we're trained to control situations with the appropriate level of force," explains Officer Renee Alvarez, who responded to the scene. "What Mr. Norris demonstrated was textbook, perfect, neutralizing a threat without creating additional harm. That kind of restraint is what we aspire to, but don't always achieve." The article concluded not with Chuck's takedown of Tyrell, but with a quiet moment from the veterans class. As the session ended, a student asked Norris how he remained so calm during the confrontation on Figueroa Street. His answer encapsulates everything about his approach. Fear and anger make you react. Training and discipline let you respond. Reaction is instinctive. Response is intentional. The difference matters. DJ set down his phone, struck by the simplicity and power of those words. In a world of reaction, quick offense, viral outrage, performative confrontation, intentional response stood out as almost revolutionary. Across town in the LA County Jail, Tyrell Johnson sat in the common area, ignoring the television that played in the background. His arraignment had gone as expected, no bail due to the probation violation. His public defender was pushing for a plea deal, but the viral nature of his crime complicated matters. The TV suddenly caught his attention as a news anchor announced, and in our final story tonight, the woman assaulted in last week's viral video involving Chuck Norris has published her account of the incident. Terrell's head snapped up as Layla's face filled the screen. Composed, professional, her injuries mostly healed. The anchor continued, journalism student Layla Santiago's thoughtful analysis has gone viral for a different reason, focusing not on the sensational aspects of the confrontation, but on the ethical choice to intervene when others stand by. The screen cut to Isla being interviewed. Everyone's focused on the physical techniques, but that misses the point. Atha B. Real story is about the decision to engage rather than walk past. That's what I tried to capture. Terrell watched intently, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face. When Chuck appeared briefly in a clip from the Veterans Center, Tyrell leaned forward unconsciously. "The man who assaulted Miss Santiago remains in custody," the anchor concluded, facing multiple charges, including assault with a deadly weapon. As the segment ended, an older inmate sitting nearby turned to Terrell. "That was you, wasn't it? The guy who got taken down by Chuck Norris." Tyrell said nothing, his expression guarded. "Man, I saw that video," the inmate continued. "You're lucky." "Lucky?" Tyrell scoffed, finding his voice. "I'm locked up. My probation's revoked. There are 50 million people who've watched me get humiliated. How am I lucky?" The older man shook his head slowly. "Because he could have destroyed you, but he didn't. He could have pressed charges, but he didn't. He gave you something most people don't get." "What's that?" Tyrell asked, genuinely curious despite himself. a chance to learn from it. The man studied Tyrell thoughtfully. Question is, will you? Before Tyrell could respond, a guard called for return to cells. As he stood to leave, the question lingered in his mind. Would he? Could someone like him, who had built an identity on dominance and intimidation, learn a different way? The answer wasn't clear, but for perhaps the first time, he was asking the question. At the UCLA School of Journalism, Ela sat in her professor's office, still processing the response to her article. "It's been picked up by The Atlantic," her professor said, not bothering to hide her pride. "The New York Times wants to run an adapted version in their Sunday magazine, and there's talk of a documentary." Ela shook her head, overwhelmed. It was just an assignment. It was exceptional reporting. The professor corrected. "You found the story beneath the sensation. That's what great journalism does." Ila touched her scalp absently. The wounds nearly healed, though faint scars remained. "I had a unique perspective. You certainly did." The professor leaned forward. "And now you have opportunities. The question is, what will you do with them?" Ila had been considering this question since the article was published. The offers were tempting. National platforms, professional recognition, financial compensation. Yet something about the attention felt at odds with the very principles she had written about. "I want to continue exploring the theme," she said finally. "Not just this incident, but the broader question. What does it mean to engage rather than stand by? What does real strength look like in everyday life?" The professor nodded approvingly. A series, perhaps? Maybe. Layla's thoughts were already forming around the concept. Everyday heroes. Not just dramatic interventions like Chuck's, but the small choices people make to engage rather than look away. As they discussed the possibilities, Ila's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced down to see a message from Chuck. "Well done. You told the right story. Simple, direct, authentic, just like everything else about him." In a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of California, Chuck Norris knelt in his garden, hands deep in soil as he transplanted vegetables into neat rows. The physical work provided a counterbalance to teaching, connecting him to the earth, to growth, to patience. His phone sat on a nearby bench, notifications disabled. The media requests had finally begun to slow, producers and hosts realizing he had no interest in the spotlight. The viral moment was fading, as all such moments do, and that was exactly as it should be. A car pulled into his driveway, Officer Alvarez's personal vehicle. She approached the garden with respectful purpose, waiting for him to acknowledge her before speaking. "I thought you'd want to know," she said without preamble. Johnson's agreed to a plea deal. 3 years with possibility of parole after 18 months. Mandatory anger management and counseling. Chuck nodded, wiping soil from his hands. "Thank you for letting me know. There's something else." Alvarez hesitated. "He's asked to speak with you through his attorney." This caught Chuck's attention. He looked up, studying her expression. "Why?" He didn't say. Alvarez shrugged slightly. "It's unusual, but not unheard of. Sometimes perpetrators want closure. Sometimes they want to apologize. Sometimes they just want to understand." Chuck considered this, his expression thoughtful. "What do you think?" "Professionally, I'd advise against it." Alvarez's tone was matter of fact. "Personally, I think it might be the only chance he has to learn, something beyond the consequences of his actions." Chuck nodded slowly, returning to his gardening. "Let me think about it." Alvarez respected his non-answer. Changing the subject, the girl's article was good. She captured something important. "She did," Chuck agreed. "She has a gift for seeing beyond the surface. Unlike most of the internet," Alvarez said with a slight smile. "Though the memes have been entertaining." Chuck chuckled, genuinely amused. "So I've heard." As Alvarez prepared to leave, she paused. "You know, in 15 years of police work, I've responded to hundreds of assaults. Usually, by the time we arrive, the damage is done, victims hurt. Perpetrators gone or still violent, bystanders looking the other way. Chuck listened, continuing his work. What you did, stepping in, controlling without escalating, protecting without vengeance, it changes the equation. Alvarez met his eyes directly. It reminds us what's possible. Chuck straightened, wiping his hands on a cloth. One moment doesn't change the world, he said quietly. Maybe not, Alvarez conceded, but it might change one person, or two, or a dozen. She gestured toward his garden. Isn't that how things grow? One seed at a time. After she left, Chuck returned to his work, rhythmically, moving soil, setting plants, establishing roots. The physical labor allowed his mind to process their conversation. Terrell wanted to speak with him, the young man, whose life had intersected with his in a moment of chaos and consequence. He wasn't surprised, really. Such encounters rarely ended cleanly, especially for the one who had lost everything in the process. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across his garden, Chuck considered what Alvarez had said. One moment doesn't change the world, but it might change one person. 3 days later, Chuck sat in a sterile visitation room at the county jail. No cameras, no audience, no viral potential, just two men on opposite sides of a table. Tyrell entered in handcuffs in prison orange, his physical presence diminished by confinement. The swagger was gone. The performative confidence evaporated. He sat across from Chuck, eyes downcast at first, then forcing themselves up to meet. The steady gaze of the man who had so efficiently dismantled his identity. "Thank you for coming," he said finally, his voice rougher than Chuck remembered. Chuck nodded but said nothing, giving Terrell space to find his words. "My lawyer says you didn't press charges." Tyrell's expression revealed confusion. "After what I did, after the knife." "Correct," Chuck confirmed simply. "Why?" The question burst forth, carrying genuine bewilderment. "I don't get it. I would have hurt you if I could. I wanted to." Chuck studied him thoughtfully before responding. "More charges wouldn't teach you anything new." Tyrell blinked, processing this. "So, what am I supposed to learn? That I got beat? That I'm not as tough as I thought? If that's all you take from it, you've missed the point entirely." The blunt assessment landed hard. Tyrell's jaw tightened, a flash of the old anger surfacing, then subsiding. "Then what is the point?" he asked, genuine curiosity breaking through the defensiveness. "That's for you to discover." Chuck leaned forward slightly, "But I'll give you somewhere to start. Why did you attack that woman?" Tyrell shifted uncomfortably. "She was filming me, getting in my business, and that justified dragging her by her hair, threatening her with a knife." "No." The admission came reluctantly but honestly. "But in the moment, I just reacted." Chuck nodded. Reaction versus response. That's the first lesson. Tyrell's brow furrowed in confusion. You reacted from fear. Fear of being challenged, of looking weak, of losing control, Chuck explained. Reaction is instinctive, unthinking. Response is intentional, considered. Like what you did, Tyrell said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. You didn't just react to me. No, Chuck confirmed. I assessed the situation and responded appropriately. Minimum necessary force, maximum control. Tyrell absorbed this, his expression thoughtful for perhaps the first time since their encounter. I've been watching that video, he admitted over and over. The guards let me see it. His voice lowered. I keep trying to figure out how you did it, how you took me down so easily. It wasn't about technique, Chuck said. It was about presence, about staying centered while you lost your center. For several moments, they sat in silence, student and teacher, though neither had chosen those roles. I can't change what happened, Trell said finally. Can't undo it. No, Chuck agreed, but you can choose what happens next, even here. He nodded toward the walls around them, especially here. Terrell looked down at his cuffed hands, then back at Chuck. I don't know how to be different, he admitted, vulnerability cracking through his facade. This, the anger, the fighting, it's all I know. Then learn something new, Chuck said simply. That's why I'm here, because you asked. Because you're looking. The words hung between them. An opening rather than a conclusion. A beginning disguised as an ending. As their time drew to a close, Terrell gathered his courage for one final question. That thing you said on the street that I'd already lost before we even fought? What did you mean? Chuck stood, preparing to leave. You lost the moment. You decided your strength came from hurting others. His eyes held Terrell's steadily. Real strength protects. It doesn't destroy. With that, he nodded goodbye and turned toward the door, leaving Terrell with something he hadn't expected. Not forgiveness or condemnation, but a choice, a path forward, if he was brave enough to take it. As Chuck walked through the security checkpoints toward freedom, a guard nodded in recognition. He's been different since that video went viral. The guard commented, quiet, reads a lot, keeps to himself. Chuck made no response beyond a slight nod. The changes in Terrell, if real, if lasting, weren't for him to validate. They belonged to the young man alone, seeds planted in ground that might or might not prove fertile. One person at a time, one moment at a time. That was how change happened. Not in viral spectacles, but in quiet conversations, not in dramatic confrontations, but in the choices that followed. 2 weeks later, DJ's taco truck had a special visitor. Lila arrived during the lunch rush, now fully healed and carrying a small package. The famous journalist graces us with her presence. DJ called out with a wide grin. What can I get you? Ila laughed, pleased by his warmth. Whatever's good, I trust the chef. As DJ prepared her order, she looked around at the thriving business. A small sign now hung beside the menu. Yes, that DJ from the video. No, I don't have Chuck Norris's autograph. Business is booming, she observed. DJ shrugged but couldn't hide his pride. Turns out going viral is good for taco sales. Who knew? He handed her a loaded plate, waving away her attempt to pay. On the house for the journalist who got the real story. They found a small table in the shade of his truck. As they ate, Ila updated him on the aftermath of her article, the speaking requests, the follow-up assignments, the scholarship offer from a prestigious journalism program. That's amazing, DJ said sincerely. You deserve it all. It's strange, Ila admitted. Being on this side of a story, I'm still not comfortable with it. Says the woman who confronted a known street thug to protect a stranger, DJ pointed out. With a raised eyebrow. I'd say you were never very comfortable with the sidelines. Ila smiled, acknowledging the truth in his observation. Fair point. After they finished eating, she handed him the small package she'd brought. This came to the newspaper office. It's addressed to both of us. DJ wiped his hands and opened it curiously. Inside was a simple frame containing a handwritten note. On plain paper, DJ and Ila, your courage took different forms that day, but both were necessary. One to intervene, one to document truth. Both require choosing engagement over apathy. Both matter. Strength reveals itself not in how we dominate others, but in how we help them rise. Remember this as your platforms grow. See, and below the note was a small photograph not of Chuck, but of his veterans class seated in meditation pose, eyes closed, completely present in the moment. DJ stared at it, then at Ila. No autograph, no selfie, just wisdom. Ila finished for him and a reminder. They sat in companionable silence, the busy street flowing around them, each contemplating the unexpected directions their lives had taken since that moment of violence and intervention. Have you heard anything about Terrell? DJ asked finally. Ila nodded. Chuck visited him in jail. Alvarez told me. No details, just that they talked. Chuck Norris. DJ shook his head in wonder, facing down a thug on the street, then visiting him in jail to teach him. Who does that? Someone who understands. That real change doesn't happen in viral moments, Ela said thoughtfully. It happens in quiet conversations, one person at a time. As the afternoon light slanted across the downtown streets, they spoke of future plans, DJ's expanded business, Layla's journalism projects, the unexpected friendship that had formed between them. The viral moment had faded from public consciousness, as such things always do, but its impact remained in the lives it had touched. Miles away in his garden, Chuck Norris continued his work, planting, nurturing, cultivating. No cameras recorded his movements. No audience witnessed his quiet discipline. Just a man living according to his principles, moment by moment, choice by choice. And that perhaps was the most powerful lesson of all. True strength needs no spotlight. It simply shows up when needed, does what must be done, and returns to the quiet work of building a life worth living, not in dramatic gestures or viral spectacles, but in the consistent application of principles. In the garden, in the dojo, on a downtown street corner when someone needs help. One choice at a time, one person at a time. That is how the world changes, not with a viral roar, but with a quiet, unwavering presence. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.